Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the WhiskyCast Live Friday afternoon happy hour. It is 5 o'clock on the U.S. East Coast, 10 o'clock in the U.K., and 2 o'clock Los Angeles time. We have managed to get through another week. And I know I keep saying this, but it keeps getting a little crazier and crazier each week as we go on doing this. I don't know where we're headed or how long we're going to be doing these things and being stuck working from home and social distancing and whatever you want to call it. But let's all relax for the next hour or so. Grab yourself a dram. I have one here with me, and we will have some fun. We have a round table of writers today. Lew Bryson will join us in a few minutes. But right now, I want to bring in Davin de Kergommeaux and Ian Buxton. Hey, guys. Davin is in Ottawa. Ian is at his home in the UK right now. How are you guys doing despite all this?
Just fine, Mark. It's an entirely different world, but I guess we just have to roll with the punches. I have to say, this is just the most bizarre situation in which to launch a brand new book. So, you're right.
Yeah, we don't envy you that, Davin. Not great timing. Not great timing.
And Davin launched, I believe, what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday, Davin?
Tuesday of this week, yeah.
With his colleague, Blair Phillips, the definitive guide to Canadian distilleries. A lot of stuff in here on literally more than 200 distilleries all over Canada, making everything from whiskey to gin, vodka, and all sorts of fun stuff, right, Davin?
Well, I think they're probably about 275 by now. We have 253 in the book. 200 of them we have profiles of. The rest are, just kind of given a listing in the back.
Davin, did you manage to get a listing for hand sanitizer production?
We do have that on our website. Yeah, it's a little bit. I mean, we're trying to keep it up to date, but we're close to 100 distilleries in Canada making hand sanitizer right now. Yeah. So it's CanadianDistilleries.com, and you go to the blog, and there's a list of them there. But we keep updating it. Blair's actually doing that. He really keeps on top of that kind of thing. So it's we were just thrilled.
I actually had seen how they stepped me the other day on Twitter if we were going to do reviews of hand sanitizer and tasting notes for them, and no, we are not.
Yeah, I think that's a real concern, because it's not potable.
No, it's not supposed to be, at least if they use the denatured alcohol like they're supposed to.
Like they're supposed to. Yeah.
While we're waiting for Lew to come in, and I want to point out that Ian also has the 4th edition now of 101 Whiskies to Try Before You Die. And got a listener comment actually even before the show started on this one, Ian, from Simon Seaton at So Many Whiskies tweeted, "Oh dear God, no! I thought I had put this madness behind me."
Yeah, Simon, that's great. Good to hear from you. Simon is my single. I mean, I think he's my single hardcore fan because. Yeah, we started Simon on this kind of madness. I did a tasting in Aberdeen at the Aberdeen Book Festival many years ago, and I guess Simon works in the oil industry. He went along to that tasting, and that got him started. And he's then dedicated all of his free time to tasting all of the whiskies in the book. But then I keep revising it, and the problems just get darker and darker for Simon. So for Simon, I apologize.
One of the nice things, though, Ian, about updating that book all the time is that I've got another 101 whiskeys before I have to die.
Exactly. And I give you I have a top tip, sir. A top tip. Stop at 100, and then you live forever. As always,
bring in our buddy Lew Bryson now, right in the middle of the dram here. How you doing, Lew?
Pretty good.
There's the man.
Hey, Ian, how you been?
We're probably hearing you, Lew. Is that how close are you to your microphone?
Not that close. I had to get on my phone. My laptop's giving me trouble.
Okay. Not a problem then. We will work around it. I also want to point out that Lew has a new book out too that also came out just a couple of weeks ago, the Whiskey Masterclass, the ultimate guide to understanding Scotch, bourbon, rye, and more. It's your second whiskey book, right, Lew?
That's correct. Tasting Whiskey came out in 2014, I think.
So let's, I want to have a little fun here. Let's just go ahead and get this over with right now, because Lew has been probably one of the more strident voices on Twitter, coming to us from Pennsylvania, the land that time and logic forgot.
Still waiting on the full fruits of repeal, as I like to say.
And Lew has to deal with you have the only state in the country with closed liquor stores. And let's explain this for folks that don't quite understand just what's going on in Pennsylvania.
We have a controlled state liquor system, which is not completely unheard of, but alone out of all the states in the country, the Pennsylvania government has chosen to shut down our liquor stores with no real reason given. I think it's the safety of the employees, but they've shut down every liquor store in the state. I mean, we only have about 600. So right now, the only place we can get spirits is at our local distilleries. I'm actually drinking a Manatoni Stillworks whiskey in solidarity with my fellow Pennsylvanians because we can't get anything else right now. All we can get is Pennsylvania distilled whiskey. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, they're good whiskeys, but it does kind of cut down on selection.
I know you did a change.org petition online, I think earlier today. I know I've already signed it to get your good friend and drinking buddy, Governor Tom Wolf, to open up the stores, or at least a little bit. Well, they opened up for online, and then that has gone over just stunningly well.
Yeah, the website's been completely overwhelmed.
You've got to get your lads to give Doug Ford, our premier, a call, because he has decided that liquor stores are an essential service. So he's closed down construction in Ontario, but liquor stores, LCBO, that's an essential service, and they will remain open. And
well, I saw you actually are doing in Ontario what I'm trying to get Pennsylvania to do. You've allowed restaurants to sell wine and beer for takeout, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a wonderful.
Boris has ordered a complete lockdown of the country. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. How are you coping out in the middle of the countryside?
Correct. Well, selfishly, my standard every day doesn't really change. This whole business of writing is pretty self-isolating in and of itself. So on a day-to-day basis, personally, not a lot has changed. Boris, you're right, has caused a lockdown, and it seems to be working. It seems to be holding. All of our pubs, all of our on-trade, all of our on-premise business is completely shut down. Pubs, hotels, clubs, they're gone. But just as in Canada and everywhere, bar the great state of Pennsylvania, off-premise liquor stores has been deemed essential. And so we are seeing a rush to the off-premise, as you might expect. In fact, last week, the press were reporting there was a national gin shortage. So there were three things.
How the hell did you win in England for crying?
There were three things that British people ran out of: toilet roll, pasta, and gin. Yeah, life is definitely getting tough, but it is on a serious note. On a serious note, it is really tough for all the bar people, the pub people, and to have that closed down is a measure just of how seriously it's being treated.
I just want to point out that if you're watching on the internet, you can add comments in on any of the platforms. Just to add a comment, we will see it here, or at least I will see it here, and we can put it up on the screen, like David Owen is saying, "Hi everyone, Greetings from Germany. How is everyone keeping? Also, Scott Rogers in Wisconsin. Looking forward to Lew. His book tour visit to Madison last month was canceled, and it was the very first event cancellation of the whole shutdown to affect my schedule personally. His new book is terrific.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I apologize for touching my face. I know I'm not supposed to do that.
And Brent Stewart says, in honor of Davin, he's drinking a 40 Creek Founders Reserve to start.
You know, Brent, I'm drinking the Forager. It doesn't say 40 Creek on the bottle, but that's who makes it. It's just a wonderful new take on whiskey. I think this is like innovation, taking whiskey back to the way they used to make it in Canada 150 years ago. It's pretty super. So cheers.
And Greg in France points out gin shortage, which we've already addressed, but we'll make it later on, I promise, as he points out. Nick, greetings from Pittsburgh, guys. Nick also suffering from the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board shutdown.
Solidarity, brother.
Because I know you're going to do something next week with the Pittsburgh Whiskey Friends.
Yeah, we have a thing set up for the 7th. I think it's Tuesday. We're doing a video happy hour. We were going to do a tasting, but we can't get a uniform selection of whiskey. People can't run out to the store and get one. So we're just going to drink what you have and go from there. I'll talk about the book. We'll talk about whiskey. I suspect we'll talk about the state stores, but yeah, just a good time.
That should be fun. I may even slide in there just to have a little bit of fun too. So you've already told us what you're drinking. Davin, you're drinking the Forager. Ian, do you have something in your glass?
I do, sir. What I have, I was earlier this week, I was drinking Quarantinis, which are the special house cocktail. Are you familiar with the Quarantini, gentlemen?
Yeah, we've heard about them.
We've heard the term.
Quarantini, yeah. You just take one standard of measure of anything you have in the house, shake it over ice, and that's the Quarantini. What I strongly recommend is you take by mouth one full measure, approximately 15 minutes before any government broadcast, and it's a perfect antidote. The absolute antidote.
I think that if you asked for a best-selling item, I want somebody to make the foam rubber bricks that you can throw at your TV. I'd have at least half a dozen of them.
I was going to say, you need a pile of them.
What?
You need a pile of them. Rather than or train a dog to bring them back to you.
There you go. See, Lew,
your politicians up in Ontario, because I know half of Ottawa is actually over in Quebec in the Gatineau side, but you can't go over there, can you?
No, they've closed the bridge. The border to Quebec is closed, so we're stuck here. But we're told to stay in our homes, and there's a fine if you're within 2 meters of somebody outside. And I mean, they're closed. They've closed the playgrounds. They've closed the parks. We are told to stay in our houses. It's not okay to go for a drive. It's not okay to go for a walk. We walk the dog, and that's allowed. But no, it's they're really close. Being tight about this, and they're saying that this is the only thing they can do to keep the death rate low.
These are the conditions under which we're living here now. You can go out once a day for exercise, and if you have to go out for essential medical needs, or if you have to go for essential shopping, that's it. But you don't socialize. You have to stay 2 meters, 6 foot, 6.5 feet apart. Do not go out for any casual. Don't go for go and see your friends. Don't go and see your elderly parents. Whatever. That's all verboten. And the police up in Derbyshire, there was a celebrated case just 2 days ago. They were tracking people with a drone and photographing them and shaming them on social media. It was like living in Russia or something. It was just staggering.
Where that drone was, I'd be going like this. See my book? See my book?
Always thinking.
Well, that's the only publicity I'm going to get.
we have a smart alecky comment up in Halifax who wants Davin explain to Mark what a meter is. I know damn good and well what a meter is. It's 39 inches.
It's about 39 inches. It's a yard and a little bit. We've gone to the metric system in Canada. Well, theoretically, we've gone to the metric system in Canada, but it's a yard plus a little bit.
A yard plus a little bit, exactly.
Yeah, works for me. It's scientific. Works for me.
So social distancing is supposed to be 2 meters. So that's what we're supposed to look out for.
Well, guys in Canada, the Canadian forces in the U.S., their Twitter account, they pointed out that it's actually the proper distance is the length of a hockey stick, which of course is a Canadian multi-tool.
Very nice.
Now, we had a question from Whiskey Throttle. Is it safe to gargle with Everclear? No.
Evolution in action.
No, it's not. And let's see. Our pals, Scott and Bart, the Scotch Test Dummies. I don't know if you guys have seen this one or not yet. The new Samuel L. Jackson reading of Stay the Bleep at Home. Have you seen this yet, Lew?
I've seen still shots. I haven't watched the video yet.
Oh, the video from Kimmel the other night was outstanding. If you aren't familiar with this, a couple of years ago, Samuel L. Jackson read a children's book, of all things, entitled Go the Bleep to Sleep. Now, I'm going to let you figure out what the word bleep is actually, because he actually says it, and it's a word that Samuel L. Jackson is the virtuoso of this word. And they updated it with a stay the bleep at home thing. And I'm not going to go there with you, but our pals Scott and Bart at the Scotch Test Dummies, and we're going to have you guys on at some point here, because I think that you guys would fit in really well with all the craziness on here that we're having so much fun today. As a matter of fact, Adam Spiegel, our pal at the Sonoma Distilling Company in California, having so much fun.
Stop having so much fun.
That's about the most fun all week.
And then Luna Aaron points out to our friends here, just take 60% ABV and you are safe. I'm not quite sure about that. The FDA has some rules about that. Fergie71 says, hey, it's Whiskey Fergie. Greetings from just outside of Moncton, New Brunswick.
Hey, Fergie, how you doing?
And we will see you guys hopefully in November for the New Brunswick Spirits Festival in Fredericton.
I can get across the border.
Well, we got to get you guys over for this one of these days. Fredericton is really fun in November.
I like the classification in November part.
For American Thanksgiving, because the Canadians have already had theirs weeks earlier.
Sure.
Fredericton is actually a very cool whiskey festival. I think you guys would like it. Both you too, Ian.
Okay, sounds good. You know that I'm supposed to be in Philadelphia right now today, this minute.
Yeah, yes. You were supposed to be here at the house talking to us, and we were going to have a few drams here in the basement.
You canceled because the liquor stores are closed?
I'm sorry.
I was supposed to have been in Chicago. Then with you guys, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
This is, I want to, okay, I'm going through the comments here. Graham Kroikchenk says, hi guys, having a Jura 10-year-old. We Rock Whiskey out in British Columbia says, anyone notice the synchronized cramming by Lew and Davin?
Cramming?
At the same time. Greg from France says, Davin, sorry, but due to shipping and postal problems, I couldn't get your book yet, but will do after that.
You can get it on Amazon over there.
Yeah. And you should be able to. And let's see who else and let's do a serious question here from the Tracer Bullet. I've heard that the virus may cause the end of privacy. And I'm not 100% sure we've had a lot of privacy for the last few years to begin with, but what do you guys think is going to be the end result of all this in 18 months, 2 years from now? Let's get serious for a second. Where do we go from here in terms of privacy, whiskey festivals, the ability to gather in groups? Where do we go from here?
Well, I have to say, first off, I'm still trying to figure out where we are, because there's not I don't know, well, at this point, not a day goes by that somebody doesn't point out yet another interconnection that I haven't thought about, that all this is going to impinge on and cause the crash to the ground. The postal service, the transit service. I mean, I was just watching guys pick up our garbage yesterday and thinking, when do they disappear? It's frightening. Like I said, I don't know where we are, let alone where we're going. I mean, I'm supposed to be working on an article about that now for craft beer. I mean, I write about beer as well, and that's one of my assignments right now. And it sounded like it was going to be a lark, but it's not.
I honestly,
the brew pub changed
Surely,
basically,
didn't
we? Craft
I beg your pardon, Mark. Sorry, I'm talking across you. I was just going to say, this is surely going to depend. This issue of privacy, which is very real, very serious. It's just going to depend on how long this goes on, because we're already seeing in some territories in the Far East, I think in Singapore, in Taiwan, they've been using tracking on people's mobile phones to track exactly where they're moving, who they're close to, where there's been an outbreak, where there's been an infection. And so the privacy issues that raised from the kind of big state management are absolutely enormous. So how long this goes on for will determine exactly how we react to that. And again, it's also going to be culturally determined what you can get away with in China, what you can get away with in Russia, say, and what you can get away with in the more developed West, in the UK and the USA, where privacy is very much more an issue, and in your case, written into the sort of constitutional understanding. That's going to be something for the lawyers to tease out. If we close this down quickly, I think it all goes away and we go back to normal. If this runs on for the type of weeks and months they're talking about, then we're going to get into some quite profound philosophical issues. It's going to be very, very difficult.
Davin, your premier was saying today 18 months to 2 years, if I remember you mentioning.
yeah, they figure about 18 months to 2 years before we get through this. But,
Yeah, nobody knows.
I'm with Lew. It's hard to know, what's going to come out of this. But in the short term, I think that we're going to see a lot of shaking out with the small distillers, because I think a lot of them just aren't going to be able to survive. They're operating on a knife edge now, and one of the things, one of their sources of income now is visitor centers, and when you can't do that, I mean, boy, that's a lot of money that they're losing, a big percentage of their income. And we have good delivery service, so you can get spirits out. But just the same, how much of this is impulse buying and so on. I think that there's going to be a big shakeout in the industry, and I'm really quite concerned that some of these really novel and innovative distillers who are just like on the cusp now might not survive. I
think that's right. I think there's a big. I think there was probably going to be a shakeout was going to come sooner or later, because we'd seen so many new distillery operations open up, and it's certainly here. They've been reliant initially on gin to create the cash flow that'll let them to go on to make whiskey, and it's got a very, very crowded sector now. It's a real problem for them. Yes, they've got their visitor center and they can get those impulse purchases and make those at a high margin, make those sales at a high margin. But if you're an off-premise operator in particular, why do you need 100 gins, 200 gins, 300 gins? And that's the sort of offer that's being made. So there was going to be a shakeout, I think, within the next couple of years, but this is really going to accelerate it. And what will be cruel about it is that some good businesses will fail, and some businesses that maybe should have failed will get through it just because they got deep pockets.
Quality and finances do not always go hand in hand.
No, that's going to be very arbitrary. It's going to be very arbitrary, very brutal. And I do feel for people who've put their hearts and minds and maybe the deeds to their house into this deal, and for this to sweep the carpet from under them is going to be brutal.
Like I said, the whole beer thing, I mean, we saw this in, 1996. There was a shakeout. It wasn't caused by a pandemic or any kind of disaster. It was just, we look back on it now and realize it was just a normal business thing. And to be honest, I've been waiting for it to happen with distilleries. And now this is all coming together. I'm afraid it's going to be pretty bloody.
We have a question from upstairs here at WhiskyCast Central. Christina wants to know if we think craft distillers are going to be absorbed by the larger companies.
good question. But my instinct to that is that they've mostly bought the ones they want already.
Well,
They've
I think.
taken a position.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Please finish, Ian. I apologize.
Yeah, no, I think they've mainly done all the due diligence. They've taken a position. So all of the big companies have their venture capital arm or their small business acquisition arm. Constellation have got it. Diageo have it. Pernod Ricard have it. Then you have venture funds like Samson and Surrey buying into the craft sector. So I think that by and large, the guys who were going to get picked up, whether it's like Edinburgh Gin here or Sipsmith, they've had the deal. Westward, Starward in Australia for whiskey. Diageo have an equity position with them. I think they've had the pick of the ones they want, and the others are going to have to sink or swim on their own merits.
Yeah, I don't think we're at that place in Canada yet. I don't think we're anywhere close to seeing a saturated market. We could have another 250 distilleries and they'd still only be 1% of the market here. So I don't think we're at that position. And only now are the big companies starting to look at small distilleries. And we've seen, Goodrich and Williams has been purchased by Labatt's and Ungava Gin is now with Pernod Ricard, but I think it's only just starting now. So I think we aren't at the same level of maturity that you are in the UK, and I think we're more vulnerable here too because they haven't yet. Some of them don't even have whiskey ready yet. Some of those that are going to make whiskey because they've only been around for 2 or 3 years or so. You just can't make good whiskey in that time. So I think they haven't reached the point where we really even know if they're going to be if they're going to make a great contribution. So I'm quite fearful, and I agree. Business plan, those that didn't have a good business plan, they're gone. The idea is when you start a business, the first thing is how do I make money in this particular regulatory environment, and suddenly the regulations say no visitors, and suddenly the regulations say you can't have more than 5 people in the same room, and
I think
people can't go in their cars to get there. Yeah, Lew, go ahead.
Sorry, I just think we were talking about this with breweries. Anybody who's opened in the last 6 months, I feel really bad for them because they're done. They have no chance of getting established, particularly with a distillery. With a brewery, 6 months, maybe. But, we just saw around here some breweries open in the last month. You know what? Shut it down. Get a job delivering pizza and try to wait it out. Because trying to stay open now, if you just opened, all you're doing is burning money.
Yeah. It seems to me, at the heart of that question was what are the big companies going to do? The big distillers going to go? My feeling is at several levels. First of all, I think they've snapped up most of the things they want to snap up. Secondly, if you think about it, they're going to look at this from a portfolio management point of view. And so, if you're a big distillery company, you go, well, how many craft distilleries do I need in my portfolio? How many can I handle? How many can I distribute? How many can I put the sales force and marketing force behind them? And that's going to limit it. Once they've got half a dozen or whatever in their portfolio, they go, tick, that box is done. We'll move on. Whatever's the new thing. We've done craft distilling. That's it. Thank you. Goodbye. And it's going to be brutal for the people who don't either have deep pockets, don't have wealthy founders, or haven't already done a deal with the Diageos of this world.
Yeah,
we have a couple of questions coming in, and I want to pull one of these up here. Gordon Homer, our friend from the UK, asks, will the current situation break the whiskey bubble price-wise? Will we see prices come down now, Mark? I know the answer to that one. Yeah, right. This is if you're a follower of the old Star Trek Next Generation and Deep Space Nine series. Remember the Ferengi rules of acquisition. Once they have your money, never give it. Once you have their money, never give it back.
What's going to happen, do you think, to whiskey investment? What about the guy who spent $1 million on a bottle of Macallan? What's going to happen to that?
He's going to drink it.
Yeah, I would.
That would be good. I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see these investment whiskeys drunk up. Wouldn't that be a good thing?
It's. I have to say, I really have no compassion for those guys, because honestly, the reason I can't buy a bottle of Ardbeg for $65 is because other guys are selling or buying it for $1,000 or $2,000 or $2,500.
Yeah.
You know,
You're totally right.
You know, that
You're
doesn't.
totally right.
Yeah, but the same thing with investing in a distillery right now is like beyond insanity.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that a few people who are in the distillery business have said, if you had it to do over again, what would you do? And a lot of them have said, well, we would invest in a different country, America or someplace where they appreciate it, because it's already very difficult to make. Oops, that's my dad. It's already very difficult to make money. It's already very difficult to make money here. My dad disagrees with me.
Well, I mean, the global stock markets have taken a complete beating. If you want to invest in whiskey, go buy some Pernod Ricard shares, go buy some Diageo shares, go buy some Constellation shares. Maybe it's a good
way I've said it makes sense to even invest in whiskey is by buying shares of the publicly traded companies, because at least they're liquid. You can always find a way to sell them, and there's always a market for them.
Exactly. And these guys have strong cash flow. They got enormous asset base. Look out your pension funds and get back into the stock market with some distillery shares. This does not constitute investment advice.
No, absolutely not. Investment advice, but the other advantage is they're also regulated. You never know what you're doing when you do a private deal with somebody to put money into a distillery project.
Right.
At least we know the publicly traded companies are being regulated by the government.
You got it.
And you're at least going to get legitimate financial numbers out of those guys.
Yeah. Very true.
We have a question from Tyrone Cote up in Nova Scotia. Will we see a halt to openings of new larger scale distilleries in Scotland and Ireland because of this? Yeah, I kind of think anybody that's getting ready to build a distillery anywhere is thinking twice about it right now.
Time to wait.
It probably gets mothballed right now. Depending how far they are through construction, but I'm not aware of anything that's so far advanced that it couldn't be mothballed for the moment. That's what I would be doing.
I remember being in Las Vegas back in, I want to say 2010. There's an awful lot of concrete pads with rebar sticking up through them, just sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, why spend the money now?
Oh, no. Billy Layton, our friend from Irish Distillers. Davin, talk to your dad. That's important.
You know what? It is important. I have an awesome dad. I really do. And I love my dad, and he drinks whiskey with me, and he knows the good stuff. But I'm going to wait until we're done, and then I'm going to call him back.
Oh,
why have you got him living in an alarm clock? I'm worried about this.
And we ought to point out, hey, Billy is going to be joining us next Friday night.
Good.
A Blenders Roundtable, and I've got it confirmed now. Billy Layton from Irish Distillers is joining us next Friday on the happy hour at 5 o'clock East Coast time. We're also going to have Stephanie McLeod from Dewars, the master blender from Dewars, and the one and only Dr. Don Livermore from Distillers will be joining us for a blending roundtable. So just to give you a hint of what's coming up next week, Greg wants to point out, though, I hope the Brora, Port Ellen, and Rosebank rebirth projects won't be delayed, though. Any word on those?
No word specifically, but I'd be surprised if they were. I'd be surprised if they were shut down. I mean, they're not such a vast amount of money to Diageo that it's material to their business. They're very committed to it. They're very committed to get those whiskeys out in due course. I would be surprised. I'm guessing here. I have no special insights on it. If I were Diageo, yes, I'd be going full strength with those projects, assuming you can get a workforce onto the site, which at the moment you can't do.
Yeah.
What I would mothball is the around $200 million project for a Johnny Walker visitor center in the center of Edinburgh. Edinburgh tourism is badly hit by this. Edinburgh are looking at legislation to slow down Airbnb rentals, which have hollowed out a lot of the city centre to the consternation of residents. And if I were spending some money, $200 million on a Johnny Walker Centre in Edinburgh, that's a fairly easy cut right now.
I don't think they need to cut, because the long term, I think, hopefully we'll get back to normal, but I can't imagine.
Can we revisit that? Actually, the question you had before about where are we from here? You mentioned whiskey festivals. Are people going to go back to bars? Are people going to go back to restaurants? Are they going to feel safe? Is there going to be I don't want to use that word hangover. Is there going to be a residual fear of being together in open spaces? Or are we going to be so hungry for it that we'll rush back? I don't know. I don't tend to do what other people do anyway. I mean, that's why I chose this brilliant career of writing about whiskey. But I don't know what people are going to do. And that's kind of important to our business.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I am not doing a project they're doing in Lebanon, Kentucky, the second distillery they're building. I could see them slowing that thing down a little bit, but I don't see them. They don't have any other distilleries other than the projects with Brora and Port Ellen and the visitors centers. I don't see them doing anything else right now. They're not doing anything in Canada, right, Davin?
No, they're not. But it's just about everybody has expanded over the last couple of years. But, I think that if this really lasts 18 months, 2 years, like the government tells us, I think what people are going to do is they're going to step back and say, where is the best place to invest my money? And is it even in distilling? I don't think that we can just expect that we're going to pick up where we left off and everybody's going to go along on the same trajectory. I think, we're going to have to look at what's going to happen. For example, in Canada, we're predicting a major multi-year slump in the tourism industry, in travel. Well, that's a big deal. But as far as going back to bars, I'm certain people are going to start going back to bars, and I'm certain people are going to start going back to restaurants, provided they're even there.
Right.
It's terrible. At least in Canada, our workers are getting a stipend to keep them from the government, to keep them from starving to death. But man, I think that it's going to be a different world. And I think there's going to be an opportunity here for new businesses and new kinds of businesses to arise. As far as Airbnb, I see the prices slumping to the point it's not worth a lot of people's time to rent out their rooms or to rent out their houses or things like that. I mean, we're already starting to see this, that prices are going down. I think that predicting the future today, when we're really at the very, very beginning of an extremely difficult and expensive couple of years, I think that it would be difficult to predict. And I think that what's going to happen is some bright people out there are going to have new ideas of new ways, and we're going to see the curve changing. We're going to know when people are going to start being able to socialize again, and there will be new things that people will be doing. I don't think we're going to go back to the same old at all. And unfortunately, I think that's the same with opening new distilleries. I think what we've got is what we've got for now.
So you're not.
One of the fun things about doing these happy hours is that we get a bunch of industry people jumping in here as well. We just heard from Andy Watts down in South Africa at the James Sedgwick Distillery, who points out that our Facebook Live video feed is a little bit better than the other ones. Thank you for sharing with us, Andy. But our pal David Blackmore from Glenmorangie and Ardbeg has a good question here. Do you think the current situation is going to affect the low or no alcohol movement adversely? Or are people going to double down on their healthy lifestyle as a result of the COVID-19 experience?
I think you'd have to ask Ian, can you make a quarantini with a low alcohol beverage?
There is no such thing as the low alcohol quarantini. Certainly not. So now that you wash your mouth out, because that's bad talk. I think, again, it comes back to how long this is going to go on for. But I think there's a real possibility that people are going to party like there's no tomorrow once the leash comes off. And so it could be very good for the alcohol business. I'm not sure I would be buying shares in any cruise line business at the moment. So there will be shifts. There will be changes. Maybe long-haul tourism is going to take a bad knock. So we're all going to holiday here in the UK. You're all going to holiday domestically. But I actually think people will bounce back. I think people will party like there's no tomorrow once the leash comes off.
I just did a piece on non-alcohol beer, and at the end of it, well, because I got paid to. Why do you write? Come on. And as I finished it, I said to my wife, well, I got that non-alcoholic beer piece done. And she's like, why would you bother at this point? And I have a case of half of the stuff sitting in the house. And some of it tastes pretty decent, but I'm not drinking it.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you there, Lou. I saw a tweet from somebody yesterday who said, with all this pandemic stuff going on, I'm rethinking saving my good bottles and just going ahead and opening them up now. And
yeah, good. Yeah, there's that $1 million Macallan. It can get opened. Get it opened.
Yeah.
Get it open.
Now, from Shai Gilboa in Israel, I met Shai and his father at the Isla Festival back in 2010. And Shai wants to know if we think the current situation will hurt the New World hot climate distilleries like Kavalan, Paul John in India, and Milk and Honey in Israel. What do you think of that, guys?
Three different companies there. Kavalan, very, very deeply financed, deep pockets, very, very committed owner, private ownership, a lot of money behind them. They've got stock, they've got interesting award-winning whiskeys. So, I think they're good to go. They'll be fine. A smaller new distillery like Milk and Honey, well, it's a much riskier situation for them. I would be worried for them.
Davin? Lou?
I think it's hard to say. I agree with you on Kavalan is a fun project of a major coffee company, so
major company.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to make much difference where they're located. John Paul, I don't really think it's going to make much difference where they're located. Those companies are all doing well, but I think the real risk is for the people who are just kind of establishing a reputation. Milk and Honey, I agree. I think that they're probably in much less favorable position than John Paul or Kavalan. But
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was just saying that, I mean, right now, as we keep saying, we don't really know where we are. Right now, in the depth of this, I wouldn't bet any money on any kind of Italian distillery. But next month, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how fast this moves.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How fast will it move? But it's early days, isn't it? This show has just started.
And
I honestly couldn't predict. My fear is for the new guys.
Milk and Honey, I'm a fan. Nick Clark in Pittsburgh says, ever tasted Wiggle whiskey made here in the Berg? I know you've tasted it, Lou. I have too as well. It's good stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And we also have a comment from our pal Billy Abbott at the Whiskey Exchange. And I want to pull it up here. He had a comment on the health thing. Based on what I've seen people buying online at the Whiskey Exchange, that healthiness is out the window. Sláinte, Billy. Good point.
Yeah, Billy. Good for you, man. Cheers to that. We say cheers to that.
Billy Layton also responded to that, saying, with Ian all the way, we need to keep the bartenders engaged.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully, our bar industry here, there is a government program. There have been some glitches. There's been a few false starts of getting on the road, but there is a government program where companies can apply to have they furlough their workers, and they can have up to 80% of their salary paid by the government. So when they finally get the snags ironed out of that scheme, which they hopefully will do in the next few days, that could be an absolute lifesaver for bars and hotels. It really can. And restaurants, all that whole hospitality business, can be possibly that could be a lifesaver for them.
Yeah.
We did hear
our guys here
he joined us a few minutes late, and I'm trying to find his comment here on the scroll. Just a split second here. While I'm looking off, you guys are all looking to the camera. Just to explain, I've got a separate webcam from my laptop here, so that's why I'm looking off screen a little bit to look at the laptop, just so you can see what's going on behind the scenes here. And Simon wants to know, what is one trend in whiskey that we currently dislike?
One? Only one?
Only one. Skyrocketing prices.
Empty shelves is a hell of a bad trend as far as I'm concerned. The whole bunker thing drives me crazy when these guys, it's like toilet paper. You go and you look, and an allocation's been put on the shelf, and the first guy in buys all 10 bottles. Stop that. Just stop it.
Well, Lew, what's driving this? You know what's driving this, and this is my big bugbear. It's investment. This idea that whiskey is an investment. It's an offensive, wrong idea. Whiskey has no meaning until the moment of its consumption. Until then, it's just brown liquid in a bottle. It's completely meaningless. So investors hate it, and they're a pest on this industry. They really are, sitting there, rubbing it, looking at their spreadsheets, counting up their gains, flipping it on auction seats. It makes me ill.
I really hope they're drinking it right now. I really do.
Is that clear? Everyone got that?
And speaking of that, the Tracer Bullet asks, have we heard anything about the Fagile bottlings for the Phage that won't be happening this year? Anybody?
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
Oh, God. Oh, yes.
I think
Do we know if anybody's actually going to release a virtual Fagile bottle, or are they just going to hold them till next?
Yeah, I think, if you live on Isla, maybe you can go around and do a deal for those. I'll give you a couple of sheep. I'll give you a couple of sheep for your Fagile bottling.
Yeah, but if you do that, they're going to follow you around with a drone. That's no good.
They're trading it for a case of toilet paper. You can get them a discount at the co-op.
For that toilet paper. Toilet paper is a very negotiable currency here in this country.
I wish they'd printed my book on toilet paper. I'd have sold a shitload. I don't. It's a lot of them by now.
It's okay, Davin.
Well, there we go. Simon's eaten. There you go. Thank you, Simon.
And the Tracer Bullet says, I feel for the bartenders. I was going to donate, and then my wife was furloughed.
Ouch.
That sucks. We're sorry to hear that. And work out for you guys. Let's see. My wife points out, Christina, my business partner, the managing director, points out, I love Ian.
There you go.
This is a hell of a time to make that kind of revelation, Christina.
We really shouldn't start this rumor. We should not start this rumor right now. Let's.
No. After 33 years, she can say whatever she wants. She's earned the right.
Okay, got it.
And let's see. We're getting a lot of people cracking up, laughing here, and I think hopefully we're providing some good discussion, or at least some good distractions. I've met G2 Whiskey points out, I have met individuals who flip so they can pay for their personal whiskey. That doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it logical.
Not to mention, it raises the price on your personal whiskey.
Yeah.
It's that halo effect. It does work.
Yeah, because all it does is make everybody else. Now, Greg in Paris, or in France, points out, put the Fagile bottlings in auction for charity and give them to the NHS and other healthcare services for God's sake, or at least 10 of each from each distillery. How about that?
Yeah, how about that?
Great idea.
Yeah.
How about that?
I like that. Make the investors pay for it.
I'd certainly congratulate them, but I wouldn't be giving away somebody else's money.
And if you look at the screen,
I mean, that's a great idea. You know, those limited edition bottles, put them into an auction, and then our National Health Service gets the money. But to be serious for a moment, I think it's fair to say, I think we should say, that the industry, the bigger companies in particular, have really stepped up with big 7-figure donations to the various charity funds.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Or they've really stepped up and put their production into making hand sanitizer. I know that lots of small distilleries are doing it, but I read yesterday Diageo are making 2 million liters of 96% alcohol for hand sanitizer. Diageo, and I don't want to sing their praises particularly, but they've put, I think it's £1 million. What's that? $1.3 million into the UK bartender fund alone. And I know that a lot of the big American companies have really stepped up. So we should have one very brief applause to the industry for stepping up in a serious way for a serious crisis and supporting the people who day in, day out pour their drinks and support them. So, well done, industry. And those companies who haven't stepped up and matched those donations, now would be a very good time.
If they can afford to do it. Because I know in Canada we have 100 small distilleries that are making hand sanitizers. Others just can't afford to get to do it. And we don't. Yeah.
You also have to point out, you have to have the right kind of still, because as we've with a couple of the chemical engineers, pot stills don't get the spirit to the level of purity that they need for hand sanitizer to do it right. If you don't have if you only have pot stills in your distillery, you kind of really can't do a lot. You can do sanitizing fluid or with your heads and stuff, but you really can't get it strong enough to do the to make it.
That's right. You need a continuous still. You need a big grain operation, basically.
Right. I was actually just talking to one of our local distillers about this today, Herman Mahalik at Dead's Hat, because they've got a hybrid still, and he keeps saying, I don't have the setup to do this. But he was telling me that Rob Castle at New Liberty and the Distillers Guild in Pennsylvania, they're actually cooperating to get first runnings to companies that can boost it. And cool. They're all getting together and making it work. So
great.
And like somebody, I think somebody did point out, they're barely breaking even on that stuff. Yeah. It's for the good.
Shelter Point is making it in their pot still. It depends how you run the still, but they're able to make hand sanitizer using their gin still.
Mm-hmm.
And Luna Aaron points out big beer companies are doing it, donating and giving hand sanitizer to hospitals taken from non-alcoholic beer.
Well, there we have a good use for non-alcoholic beer. There we go. There we go. Finally, gentlemen, we have invented a use for vodka, and we've invented a use for low alcohol beer.
Low alcohol beer.
Be a collecting the medical alcohol and hand sanitizers made by Whiskey distilleries will be sold in auctions.
Oh no, God, I'm leaving now. I'm leaving.
No, because we did hear from upstairs our comments about from Christina. Hey, Ian,
I like the first message. I like that first message.
Let me put up let's see. Greg points out another one here. There's an even more annoying trend: red wine finishing all the way from any to hide weak distillate and then using heavily charred barrels to do it even more, I would think. Is that something we should object to strongly? Seen a lot of red wine finished whiskeys out there these days.
Not a fan.
I think as long as you can buy whiskey that you enjoy, why worry about what somebody else is making? Because maybe there's somebody out there. People are making that because there's a market. If you can find the stuff you enjoy drinking, let them make whatever else they want. As far as I'm concerned. I mean,
well, it covers flavored whiskey, right?
Pardon me?
It certainly covers flavored whiskey.
Yeah.
I mean, I think your Fireball is building all those Buffalo Trace warehouses. That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, Davin, I'm with you. I'm with you, really. This is a broad church. There's room for everybody. You know what you like, what the other guy likes. Let's be open. Let's be Catholic and free and open in our choices. If I don't like it, it doesn't really matter. If somebody wants it, way to go. It might lead them on. Who knows?
I mean, let's be really candid and frank here. If we were only going to make the very best stuff, nobody would be drinking anything except Canadian whiskey these days.
Well done, sir.
But seriously, yeah. I mean, yeah.
That brings a that brings a question to my mind, Davin. Do you by any chance have a new book out?
You mean like the definitive guide to Canadian distilleries? You know what? It's just coming out now. It's just
Really?
now. Yes, it's really quite an interesting book. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Ian. It's got 102 tasting notes in it.
102. My God.
I didn't actually count.
I think our rolling her eye. She's going.
I'd like you to know, actually, I had to taste 102 whiskeys to write this book. 102.
It took that long to find one that wouldn't make it.
You know, the rest of you are going to wave it around. I'm going to wave mine around.
Awesome book. Awesome.
Well, your publisher failed to send a copy, so blame the PR people.
Oh, you're just across the river. If I could have only done it 2 weeks ago when we were allowed to leave the house.
Yeah, still. And Aaron, so smooth, gentlemen. Well, having fun here, guys. And Christina goes, yes, Lew for the sting. Yes, we could have gotten over it. This is what I put up with every day, guys. I get a critique after the show.
You do.
Change the name of the studio, and so we're no longer calling it what we used to call it. I won't even use the B word anymore. But let's go on. We do have a serious note. David Owen asks, is it true that Glenfarclas has stopped production and closed their doors? So I heard, yes, we can confirm that. They did say the other day in an email that they did decide to stop production in addition to closing down the visitor center a couple of weeks ago. They did decide to go ahead and shut down production for the time being, just for the safety of their workers. So on a serious note, we have that. And let's see.
Responsible move.
Since it's been almost an hour since we did this, Christopher Winters in Zionsville, Indiana wants to know, what are your tipples, gentlemen? So let's just go around the clock here. Davin, what do you got in your glass right now? And then Ian and Lew.
I'm drinking, I'm lousy on tech. It's called The Forager. It's a whiskey made by 40 Creek, and it's got a little bit of, it's a little herbal. They've added some herbs to it. It's like the way they used to make whiskey in Canada 150 years ago, and it's really quite wonderful whiskey. This is innovation taking us back 2 centuries. It's just really great stuff.
Whiskey with herbs, isn't that called gin?
No, sir. No, sir. It doesn't have juniper. It's not gin.
I'm kidding.
Oh.
What's in your glass, Ian?
What's in my glass is my. Can you see my beautiful Victorian decanter?
Ooh,
Very nice.
Very
that would be lead crystal.
What we have in here is our own proprietary house blend, and how the house blend is created, like these other gentlemen, from time to time, the generous industry send me little bottles of things, and I think, oh, I'm not really going to drink that. So into the blending vat it goes.
There we go.
We give it a little swirl around, and then we sort of take a little nose of this.
I would have made a $50 donation to the bartender's son if you'd necked that thing.
Now, see, I'm definitely picking up the 1926 Macallan.
That's $1 million whiskey.
There's a whole bunch of websites this week that started talking about this trend towards infinity.
Yeah.
And what they
So
forget,
that's what it is, the house blend.
for years. And
I have an infinity cask. It holds 200 liters.
Yeah.
And it's made of oak.
Lordy.
Lew,
some good.
Does that get over woody? Because the house blend used to be made in a cask, and I found
the house blend get glassy though.
Glassy.
It's a full-size cask. Whiskey does get woodier as it matures.
Yeah, it does. So I've switched to blend. I mean, this is the sort of immediate weak supply here. But downstairs there's a big glass carbonate.
I'd like to tell you.
all those little samples, in they go, and they make the house blend. It's kind of homeopathic. There we go. So there's all kinds of things that have gone in there.
Yeah, I think my wife calls it psychopathic.
Yeah. Wait a second. Before we get to Lew, Ian, I need tasting notes on that dram. Give us the tasting notes for the for your Infinity thing here.
Well, it's very nice. Very nice.
That's a pro, folks. That's a pro.
I'm going to give this 96.5.
Well,
I'm not asking for a score. What's it nose?
No, wait. That's Ian giving a number? Wait a minute. Unprecedented.
This number thing, this is never going to catch on. 96.5. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. There's a lot of sherry finished whiskies going here. What never goes in is the really aggressively peaty ones. I have a separate vat for the really peaty ones. So this is quite rich. I don't know what the strength is. It's the only thing I can never tell you what the strength is because it's going in at 40, 46, Cask-Strength, whatever, and the proportions, who knows? This one's quite sweet. This is neat too.
There it goes.
Greg, will Ian dare to give us proper notes on this one?
Ian's never written a proper note in his life. I make it all up.
And Billy says you weren't drinking it quick enough, Ian.
He says he doesn't know the ABV. Maybe it's a low ABV whiskey.
No.
C'est impossible. So that's a bit of French for you.
Impossible.
Very nice.
Impossible.
Impossible.
We have David, Carol, and Taylor watching from Australia now, from Tasmania, where I'm really locked down on the island there.
What about that? What time is it in Tasmania?
Oh, jeez.
It's happy hour.
Gotta start the day right. Wait a minute, is that tomorrow?
Yeah, it's tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow?
Lock up on my computer. But I know something like 18, 19 hours ahead of time. David, tell us in text, what time is it there?
Oh, and ask him why he has a girl's name as well.
Oh!
Caroline. Oh, merci beaucoup.
And as Tangleman 25 points out, it's always happy hours.
So yeah,
it's true. It's true.
Let's see. Just a split second here. Let me find another question. Hope there's not, and David Owen points out, hope there's not going to be too much of a Glenfarclas shortage. It's my favorite distillery. Not for a few years, I would imagine, but a few weeks. I don't think we're going to have to worry about that terribly long. Okay, Nick Clark has a good question. Best distilleries to go to when I visit Ireland again. I'll be in Dublin. Okay, that should be simple. You've got a few choices there. Guys, anybody want to tackle that one?
Oh, the Teeling operation is
Teeling's pretty good shot, yeah.
Pretty good to show. And I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, but I imagine Diageo are going to have something for the Rowe and Partners distillery, so that would be cool.
Pierce Lyons Distillery is amazing, where they built it in the old church,
right?
Put the stills where the altar used to be in the sanctuary, and they actually changed out the stained glass to put distilling scenes and stills into the stained glass.
Nice.
So we had some pictures of that up on the website. Then there's also Dublin Liberties Distillery, which is a couple of doors down from Teeling's and the Liberties. And I think there's a couple of others cropping up, and then the Jameson Distillery, Bow Street, where they're doing some maturation, but that's more of the visitor's center than an actual working distillery. Our pal Ian Logan is joining us again.
Hey.
Good point on finishes, Davin. Drink what you enjoy and not what someone else thinks you should drink.
Way to go. Yeah, quite right, Ian.
I got
quite right. Yeah, well, and to be fair, we're an hour and 4 minutes in, Davin. So you're going to get one eventually.
Wow.
We have one from Sarita Curtis Mullen, though. Best distillery in Ontario, Canada. Davin, this is right up your ballpark. Knock it out of the park there.
Well, I guess it would depend on what your criteria are, because there are many great distilleries here. You know, I'm a big fan of still waters. I'm a big fan of dairy distillery making vodka out of milk permeate. I love 40 Creek, and I love Hiram Walker, the biggest beverage alcohol distillery in North America. They make some truly amazing stuff. If I was going to say which is the best, I think I'd go with who won the Canadian Whisky Awards this year, which was Hiram Walker with their Pike Creek 21-year-old. But believe me, not everybody entered, and there were some truly we have some truly wonderful distilleries here. But to boil it all down to one, I think if I was giving them scores, I'd say he was, what do you say, 95.4? I'd say about 96 points for at least a half a dozen of them.
You're very stingy with the points, Davin. That's it.
The points don't really matter at this point, as I think
That's right.
pointed out from upstairs. At this point, does it really matter what the points are anymore?
No.
And Shai Gilboa points out, guys, thanks for a good laugh. Good night and Shabbat Shalom. Shalom, Shai, stay healthy. And give our family too. Let's do a serious question here. Tom Smith asks, we had to cancel an April trip and want to try again this year. What is your thought on scheduling to October? Now, I'm guessing that Tom was talking about Scotland or Ireland. And I think really right now it's too soon to say. What do you think, Ian?
It is too soon. So if he meant Scotland, October is a fantastic time to come. And it's a fantastic time to come to Scotland for a couple of reasons. The school holidays are largely finished, so the numbers of people are down, but everything is still open. And you frequently get some of the very best weather around about October. So it's a beautiful time to visit the country. So yeah, go for October if we're allowed to fly. If these restrictions come off, I'd get your tickets booked.
Okay, we have another question from Matt. We never got to this. What is Lew drinking? What are you drinking again, Lew?
Yeah. As I said, a small distillery from Pennsylvania, Manitoni Stillworks, in just outside of Pottstown, Pennsylvania, on the other side of Philly. It's their small batch American whiskey.
Change the name of that to Cannabis Town?
What?
I'm kidding.
Oh, no, two T's. Pot with two T's. It's Pot Still Town.
And Michael Farley from just down the road in Cherry Hill points out, Lew has the single greatest laugh in the industry.
Certainly the loudest.
For the record, once again, I'm drinking the Lot 40. This is the regular Lot 40, not the Cask-Strength. And
nice.
Full disclosure, Lot 40 is one of our sponsors on WhiskyCast. But talking about Canadian whiskey for a second, Christopher Luke Guff in Ireland wants to know, Davin, when will Europe ever get access to top shelf Canadian whiskeys?
Well, that will happen when European distributors put together a decent plan to show why it's worthwhile for companies to export their whiskey to Europe. Companies don't just want to go out there and sell a few cases. They don't want to create expectations that can't be fulfilled. So when European distributors begin to take Canadian whiskey seriously and offer a good opportunity to get the whiskey in, we've got loads of whiskey now. We've got some good whiskey going into Europe now, some great whiskey. Black Velvet, for example, has some really great whiskeys, 12, 15, 20 years old going into Sweden. Hiram Walker has some great whiskeys going into Eastern Germany. And it's not like we're trying to push our whiskeys on you. It's a pull strategy. If Europe
I would tell the Europeans to stop crying. We're not even getting the good whiskeys, and we're right next door.
There was a push about 18 months ago, I guess, on the so-called Northern Border collection of pretty fine Canadian whiskies, as I understand it. I tasted those; they were really remarkably good whiskies. But the problem was the quantities were so tiny that they were gone in a very. The word went round, and they were gone in a flash.
Well, the other problem was the prices were so low. That's just nobody wants that.
Well, they were fabulous value, that's for sure. They were incredible value. So I think that, sheer availability has been a problem.
Yeah,
there's been an effort to sell them here in the UK, certainly, but they were gone in lightning time.
Yeah. Well, I think that the entry level whiskeys in the Northern Border collection are all superb. They're really good. They come out with some limited releases every year, and those are the ones that get all the talk because they're special and they're limited releases. But if you want to get some of the standard entries, there would be an opportunity there for someone who is willing to put together some serious money into importing them and distributing them. The high end Northern Border collection, that's gone, in a heartbeat in Canada as well.
Right.
So, it's a different.
I think you need some money for education as well. You're going to need some serious promotion and education on it because too many people just don't understand it.
Yeah, that's really true.
They should probably hire a well-known writer here in the UK.
Well, we've had Dave Broom over here a number of times, and he really likes the stuff.
Well played.
He probably needs
I've been honored to judge on the Canadian Whiskey Awards, and Europe has no idea what they are missing.
And Gordon, a pretty solid judge, I have to say that.
We have a good question here from David Owen. What is the worst whiskey you have ever tried? Davin, you're up.
I don't really want to say the name. It was a whiskey that was made in Canada that I don't believe was really whiskey. I think it was, you can buy that instant whiskey you mix with vodka. They put it out. They said it was whiskey, 2 years old whiskey, but of course, 2-year-old isn't whiskey in Canada, and it was abominable. I've also tried. Well, no, I have. There's not much bad whiskey out there because quality control is terrific.
Ian, what's your turn?
My goodness, that is a tough one, isn't it? It's a very good question. It depends who you really want to fall out with. I mean, like Davin, some of the small craft distilleries are rushing out their product, and that can be a danger and a handicap. And I can understand why they do it for cash flow reasons, but later they need to look back and think, should we really have done this? I did have some. I'm trying to think where it came from. Some utterly vile craft whiskey from Australia. I probably shouldn't mention the name. Say the name, man. Say the name. What I find, I'll get into trouble now, but it is late. What I find disappointing is
what have you got to lose, Ian? Go for it.
What do I have to lose?
Well, anyway.
What I'm disappointed with is when you see big companies putting out product that you think really. There is a whiskey that a well-known, heavily tattooed footballer has been known to promote, and Hague Clubman, really.
Michael's going, say it. Really bad whiskey should be shamed. Okay, Lew, you're up.
I actually have two. There was a blended whiskey I had in the airport lounge in Frankfurt that was called Glob Kitty. I have no idea where the hell it came from. It was a private blend scotch. It was some of the worst things I've ever tasted. It was around the edges. It's just nasty. But I don't really know that too many GLOB kitty. I don't know what that means I assume like some kind of slang German. But anyway, the other one is the first bottling of the Rogue Dead Guy whiskey from Rogue in Oregon. And I feel no shame saying that because we have since I've been there, I've talked to them, they're making much better whiskey these days, really good whiskey, but that first bottling should not have been released.
Can I change my answer?
Of course.
Ankara single malt. Without question, the worst whiskey I have ever tasted. I bought 2 bottles of it. It's made in Turkey.
It is Ankara as in Ankara.
As in Ankara.
Wow.
And I was in Ankara when I bought it. It was vile. Unfortunately, before I tasted it, I gave a bottle to my dad. And he agrees with me.
That's why he's calling.
That's why he's turning you. That's why he's turning you.
So I'm changing my and I'm naming it. And I doubt they feel shame. They probably don't really care what I think about whiskey. But anyway, yeah.
What's really shocking me there, I just heard this. Whiskey writer buys bottle.
Well,
How does that work?
Ian, I have to say, I really was impressed with you pulling out that little wee bottle, because when I'm dealing with the small companies, I ask them not to give me whiskey I'm not going to write about, and I ask them to give me the smallest bottle they've got. And I do buy whiskey. If I really like something, I don't ask for another bottle. I buy another bottle.
Yeah.
And I buy more, and I buy more, and I buy more. And I've got hundreds of bottles that I've purchased. I understand that it's a perk, but I don't take advantage. And I really encourage the distillers to send out a 50 ml sample. Don't send out a great big bottle like this.
No, you're quite right. I mean,
no one needs
more than that. No, you're quite right about that. No one needs more than that. No one needs more than that. Loch Dew. Oh, Loch Dew. You see, there's a whiskey. Loch Dew.
I love Loch Dew, and it's got a bad reputation from people who have never tasted it. This whiskey is not as bad as everybody says. People say they don't like it, but they've never tasted it. I've got a bottle upstairs, by the way.
I can actually show you the worst whiskey I've ever tasted. I've talked about this a couple of times. I still have a bottle of this son of a gun. The infamous Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yeah, the 5-second whiskey.
That they aged for all of 5 seconds.
Way to go. It's the future.
Yeah, all 5 seconds, because they worked this deal with the TTB to say, okay, we want to call it whiskey, but we don't want to put it in a barrel. And the TTB said, no, you got to put it in a barrel. It's got to touch wood. They said, for how long? TTB said, the rules don't say. So is 5 seconds okay? TTB says, yeah. So they figured out a way to dribble the damn spirit as it comes off the still over 5 seconds. And the folks, I've joked about this before, but the folks at New Holland Distilling in Michigan ought to be really ashamed of this, because they had to put their name on the back label of this, because they actually distilled it for Pabst Blue Ribbon. And this thing, I have poured this for people who come to the house, and because they actually sent me a sample bottle, then they sent me a full-size bottle. I keep this as a threat. We got it right here if we need it.
Yeah, you got it now.
Worse, you can redistill it and use it for hand sanitizer.
There you
go.
Scotch Test Dummies says, I won't put this up. White Walker. They're saying I won't put this up because Johnny Walker is one of our sponsors. Okay, I didn't think White Walker was that bad.
Right.
I totally enjoyed it. And just to prove it, I'm going to disconnect for a split second here.
Is this because you're ashamed, Mark?
The bottle is quite.
There it goes. Oh, he is disconnecting. Well, where it goes.
You know,
Yeah.
what I love on a podcast is seeing somebody's arm.
Yeah, he needs
Someone's arm.
that is an arm that badly needs a tattoo. I think we should club together to give the guy a tattoo. What about that, Mark? You should have a tattoo. Oh, here it comes again.
There, guys.
We see his watch strap. There it is. And
Okay, I'm back.
now for a word from our sponsors.
Am I still in? I can't see anything moving.
It's there. No, you're there. You're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good.
You're
Yeah,
back.
everything's frozen, so I have no idea what I look like.
What?
You know, except the usual.
I'm sorry, what?
You've aged
No,
quite a
no.
lot.
The video is all frozen up on my screen, but
Yeah, you've
Now,
aged quite badly. I was just saying earlier that Lew Bryson, he's let himself go, hasn't he?
so, just
No,
to
he's drinking it.
just
He's
to
drinking it.
it's not empty. We should point out Brent Stewart points out, Davin, you are a champion of Canadian whiskey. Whiskey Jason points out, says hi from Germany. Bill Ricker in Boston, our club was regifted a bottle of Loch Dew under our bottle amnesty program. Gifty's friends we like scotch and saw this nice looking bottle, so. Ratings creep. Does anyone rate whiskeys below 93 anymore? From Marcel Dion. Yes, I rate them 92 and 91.
I don't rate them. I don't put numbers, Marcel. No numbers. Don't do numbers.
Bill Ricker on that Loch Dew. Tasting notes included used motor oil aged in an ashtray. And if you don't think of it as whiskey, but in the Malort Branca category, it's not.
But the question I ask is, did they know they were tasting Loch Dew when they made those comments? Because it is just politically incorrect to like Loch Dew unless you're secure in.
it's all up in your head.
You're confident in your ability to taste good whiskey. So I pull a lot of great notes out of Loch Dew, quite honestly. I agree it's a little intense, but
Okay. My oldest daughter, Brianna, points out.
But let's not forget, Black Bowmore was also made the same way. Sorry.
And Mike Farley goes, use it to ward off suitors. Yeah, of course. They must really hate you, Mark. Gordon Homer points out. But Billy Layton says, you're on your own, guys. But Billy Abbott, in my defense, White Walker was significantly better than it needed to be.
That is a brilliant statement.
It's just White Walker.
That is insightful. That is an insightful comment. Oh, for sure.
Let me just go back here because there was one comment I was saving towards the end here. And I got to scroll back up through it here. I'm stalling right now.
While you're looking, I'll note that there were some Game of Thrones beers done by Omegang here in the U.S. that had a similar issue. Some of them were definitely better than they had to be. On the other hand, some of them were right on the mark.
Right.
Bill Ricker,
Barnes and
coincidence, while watching three authors waving their new books, I receive an email from Barnes and Noble informing me the website is still open and I still get free shipping from membership.
By golly, go at it.
Go, get in.
Now, here's one from Tyrone Cote. Observation. Mark, your shirt is way more tame and significantly easier on the eyes than your compatriots on the call.
I noticed that too.
What?
I noticed that as well.
I some very fine shirts on display here.
Yeah.
Very fine.
It's because I don't do my own shopping.
It's because I don't do my own shopping.
Hey, there are people in this family with far better taste for clothes than I have.
Yeah, I agree.
So was that? Where were they?
Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, each a chance now, and I'll start with Davin
Mm-hmm.
to tell us, because this was a question we had thought about earlier today. tell us where to find your book and give us a couple of good recommendations in Canada for good bookstores to buy your books from. Where would you they go to?
I'll tell you, the easiest way to get this book right now is to go to, buy it online at any of the online sellers. Now, I'm a little bit more partial to Amazon now that they're delivering medical supplies for the Canadian government. Also, Indigo Chapters on their online site. I like them too because they've laid off all their staff, but they're continuing to pay them their salaries while they're off. But there are a lot of really good independent stores. I love Epic Books in Hamilton. They will. They're doing a mail order. I like Appetite for Books in Montreal. Books on Beechwood in Ottawa. Now, McNally Robinson, they're in Saskatoon and in Winnipeg. They also are doing a good mail order business there, and I think they're doing curbside pickup as well. So there are a number of independent stores here as well. But really, the only way to get a book in Canada right now is online. Go to an online seller.
Ian, your turn. Caught you in the middle of the drink there. Who do you recommend for your books in the UK?
Yeah, well, I think Davin is right. In the troubled, difficult times that we're living in, Amazon are doing a good job for delivery. Other online operators, of course. Waterstones have a good online operation. Don't Books, there we go. It's just come up on screen. Don't in Independence in London largely, but they will obviously ship around the UK. Waterstones, great job, and the Works tend to sell at quite a severe discount. So, but as Davin says, right now it has to be online. Sadly.
Okay, Lew, you're up. Who do you recommend?
At this point, I'm recommending Amazon and getting the Kindle because no one touches it. So I think that's your most hygienic version of both of my books. As far as bookstores, I don't know who's carrying the new book yet. I do know that there are a number of distilleries that are in their gift shop. I know that Blom Brothers in Galena, Illinois, is carrying the book because they asked me how to do that, which was great. I'm pretty sure that Jay Henry's in Wisconsin is carrying the book, and I know that my local Dead's Hat is supposed to be getting some in. So, and of course, you can always swing by my house because I've got $3,000 worth of books in my garage that were supposed to go on tour with me and are now just sitting there doing nothing. So I'll be sitting out in front of the garage in a chair.
Earlier, you told us Fountain Bookstore in Richmond, Virginia will ship, right?
Correct. They will, and they. I really should get in touch with them. She has a really great signed edition program. I mean, people contact them from across the country and they ship. So I should really look into seeing if I can set something up with her to at least do some book plates and send them down. But yeah, they've been very good to me, and it's a great little shop.
And Tracer Bullet asked a quick question about the not Fishke on that worst whiskey. No, Fishke actually scored higher than the Pabst Blue Ribbon whiskey. Not by much, but it did score.
What, it scored one?
No, it scored. I think I scored Fishke a 40, and I think I scored the Pabst Blue Ribbon at 35.
Wow.
That's low.
And
Brutal.
Scott Rogers said he got Lew's new book from Amazon last month. And
Bless you.
This month, get mine.
Billy Abbott a dispatch notification for Davin's book.
I'm feeling kind of left out here.
I got 4 of your books upstairs.
No delivery in France, even online, unless it's healthcare material or foodstuffs only through Amazon.
Oof.
Ooh.
Telling you, Kindle's the way to fly.
Kindle. Yeah, do
always
Kindle. It's
Instant
delivered by a
gratification.
computer.
You can get it on iBooks and bring it into an iPad. Okay, guys, this has been an absolute hoot. We have gone on for an hour and a half, believe it or not. This was a definite waste of bandwidth and pixels.
Well, Oh, so Mark, that's nice. Thank you. I'll have my agent give you a call. You can remit the. You
Okay,
can remit the
sorry.
$3. That's
You've been
fine.
out for a couple of months now, Ian, so everybody's already had a chance to get it. Plus, you've done 4 editions of it. What's new? Okay, Ian, what's new in the current edition of 101 Whiskies to Try Before You Die, the 4th edition? What's there that wasn't in the first 3 editions?
That's very good of you to ask, Mark. How kind of you.
I am a professional and nothing else.
Actually, in fairness, and we'll acknowledge Davin now. We suddenly got a whole bunch more Canadian whiskies that weren't in first time around. A lot more American USA whiskies. And why have I got more American and Canadian whiskies in there? Because here in the UK and the European theatre, they are representing some of the very best value, some of the best quality value for money equation that you can buy. But actually, about 65% of the book has changed either slightly or completely. So lots of new entries, lots of revisions, but lots of North American whiskies. And I'm very glad to see them in there, and they're doing great business.
I'm just looking through it right now, and I see you took Georgia Moon out of this edition.
Sad. What can I do? What can you do?
No, Georgia Moon was worth
into each life, some rain must fall.
I'm just looking through here to see if there's anything unusual. Let's see on the U.S. whiskey side.
Well, you've got Lost Spirits. That's pretty unusual.
Yeah,
Lost Spirits, pretty unusual. I was a big fan this time. I don't think I'd really mentioned them before. I really didn't think I'd given them the shape and the space they deserve. And that was Michter's. I'm a big Michter's fan these days.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Mellow Corn is in here. I got it confused with Georgia Moon. Mellow Corn is in here.
Yeah, you got
yeah.
Easily done, Lee. Easily done.
And the Lost Spirits Abomination, that's one of those Franken whiskeys that they ran through the little through their little whiskey food processor thingy.
Through the strange process of it. You got to try. You've got to try these things. You have to try this stuff.
Yeah.
Why not?
Okay, I'm with you for a second. I tried the Abomination several years ago, and I still have about most of a bottle of it in the back room. But they didn't tell me at the time when I tasted it and did the interview that they had processed this thing. They tried to pass it off as a legitimate whiskey.
All right.
Processed. And so I've had sort of a little bit of a sore spot for that whiskey ever since, just because I don't really take well to being. I
do not like being misled.
Yeah.
No, you shouldn't.
Screw with it, and you're going to use technology, but be straightforward about it.
Be straightforward. Well, I think they're open about it now. They make a big play of that.
They weren't then, and that's.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not saying it's the greatest whiskey in the entire history of the world, but I think it's interesting. It's worth trying. It's different. So why not? Why not?
Okay, guys, this once again has been a complete hoot. We've managed to waste an hour and a half of people's lives here. And gentlemen, thank you for doing this. And we'll have to do this again in a few weeks. And thank you again. I'm going to let you guys all go now. And just a couple of quick final closing thoughts here. We will have a fresh episode of WhiskyCast this weekend. Generally comes out on Sunday evenings, Monday morning. And don't forget to join us next Wednesday, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, New York time, 10 o'clock p.m. in London and the UK on summertime now, 2100 GMT. We have a fully packed show planned for you right now. Michael Urquhart, the retired managing director of Gordon Ale and one of the nicest guys in the whiskey business, is going to join us. We also have a few other guests lined up. And we will do as I mentioned earlier, a Blenders Roundtable coming up on next Friday night during the happy hour at 5 o'clock. And please feel free to visit us online at whiskycast.com for tasting notes and all the other fun stuff, plus that complete archive of all of our past episodes of WhiskyCast. One thing I wanted to point out. I mentioned this on the show a few days ago, and as we've talked about earlier tonight, the bartending community is in need of some dire help. And one of the things I've offered to do is that if you will donate $25 to the USBG Foundation, United States Bartenders Guild Foundation, to their Bartender Emergency Assistance Program, or any other similar fund that supports bartenders if you're outside the U.S. or the hospitality industry, I have said that I would be glad to record a voicemail message for your phone. And we've got one that we've done already, and we've done a couple of others that are in the works that we're just waiting for copy approval on from everybody. And I am looking forward to doing those. I'd like to do a lot more of those. And that's $25 if you want me to do it for your personal phone. If you have a business and you want me to do it for your business, it's going to be $250. Because, if you're doing it for a business, then we're talking a little more extensive research and a little more extensive copywriting approval and things like that. Just because, for obvious reasons, I don't want it to sound too much like an endorsement. But if it's for your personal voicemail, $25 to the USBG Foundation. Email a copy of the receipt, whether you do it to the foundation or to a similar group. You just email it to comments@whiskycast.com with all the credit card information blanked out. And I promise that if you send me the full number, I won't use it. But I will be in touch with you, and I would be glad to record the voicemail for your for your mobile phone or your home voicemail or whatever. I figure it's one of the few ways I can really help right now, because we're not doing a lot of delivery or takeout here at the house. We're cooking everything in-house, so we're not able to spend a lot of money outside. So we're going to try to support the bartender community the best way we can. Once again, that's the usbgfoundation.org. If you want to donate $25 and send me a copy of the receipt, and I'll get in touch with you, and I will be glad to record the voicemail for your cell phone. Until we meet again next Wednesday, live on the internet at 5 o'clock, or coming up this weekend on the WhiskyCast podcast, I'm Mark Gillespie. Please keep a thought for all the first responders and the healthcare workers out there who are risking their lives to save us from this damned virus. And spare a thought for the folks who are suffering right now in hospitals. We've had a lot of fun and a lot of laughs for the last hour and a half, but we do this with some serious thoughts in mind. We do really hope that the folks who are hospitalized will come through this, will be able to recover from this virus and be able to join us once again to enjoy a good dram and the water of life. Until we meet again, I'm Mark Gillespie. Thanks for joining us, and good night, everyone. Sláinte.
Good night, Mark.
Good night, guys.